switching things up a little bit. So far, I've been tapping into your sweet tooth and baking things up like a perfect apple pie with a flaky, delicious crust and truly outstanding apple fritters that I probably want to eat pretty much every day of my life. But today, we are going savory. I'm very excited about it. A lot of people don't think you can go savory with apples, but the perfect combination is pork and apples. So I'm making my apple pork stew with a golden potato topping. I'm feeling really, really good about it. Okay, so first thing we need to get started on, anytime you're making a good stew, you wanna build flavor. Yeah, sure, you could dump everything into a pot and technically you'd have stew, but that just doesn't seem delicious to me. You don't get any brown color if you're doing that. So the first thing you wanna do is actually brown off your meat, no matter what type of stew you're making. So I've got a kilo of pork shoulder here. You could also use, you know those random packs of pork meat you see at the grocery store and it's just called stewing pork? And you're like, I don't know what that is, but this is what you could use it for. Basically, that's just gonna be tougher cuts of pork that needs a lower and slower cooking process. Basically, like things like pork shoulder, things like pork butt, stuff like that, it requires time to break down all of those tough tendons, and then you get the most beautiful, soft, juicy, flavorful pork ever. Like, no dry pork chop and applesauce, if anyone remembers those from their childhood. I sure do. But this is gonna be juicy and wonderful, but play off that flavor a little. So I've got that kilo of pork that I seasoned up with salt and pepper, and then I actually tossed it in a little bit of flour, about a quarter cup of all-purpose flour. Anytime I'm making stew, this is the first thing I do, because what that does is it coats it with that flour, helps with the browning, and it also helps build the sauce and that thick, stewy consistency. So I browned that off just until golden, not cooked through, just golden. And then after I took that out of that pot, I have got here my vegetables. Now, the vegetables in this pot, we've got 2 red onions that I've chopped into about 8 wedges each. I like that size for a good chunk. I've also got a leek, which is the most, I'd say, exciting onion. It looks like a giant green onion. If you've ever cooked with a leek before, though, you know you gotta slice them and then wash them, because they are sandy little guys. You wanna make sure you get all that out. I've also got a carrot in there, just 1 carrot. You can throw in more if you want. Even if you had parsnips, that would be absolutely beautiful in here. I've cooked those down in that pork fat and any residual oil that's still in there for just about like 5 to 8 minutes till there's a little bit of color. So now I am going to add in my garlic. So I'm going in with 4 cloves of garlic. Pork is good, yeah. We're getting the it's almost Halloween, get rid of those vampires. You don't want them. So I've just chopped those up nice and fine. If you wanted to, you could slice it for a little bit of a softer garlic flavor, but this is looking perfect to me. So I'm just gonna toss that on into my pot and give that a good mix together just to start that cooking process. I'm gonna crank the heat just a little bit. All right, perfect. Now, in addition to that garlic, this is the point where if you've tossed that pork in a big bowl, you're gonna have a little bit of residual flour left over, because you actually scoop the pork out. So this is the point where you're gonna add the rest of that flour. Again, this is gonna make almost like a roux with those vegetables, with that pork fat and that oil. So that's just gonna toast off for just a little. This is how you take something from like soup into stew territory. It's gonna thicken and get beautiful. All right, give that a stir. You wanna toast that flour and that garlic off for about 30 seconds to a minute. That's gonna kind of like take that raw edge of the flour off, because if I were to just dump water in now, it could tend to taste a little gluey. Does that make sense? We don't want glue, just a little bit of a toast and we are good to go. All right, so now I'm gonna deglaze, because if you look at the bottom of this pot, there's some kind of stuck on bits hanging out in there. Those little bits are flavor. Sometimes they might get a little too golden brown and you're gonna be like, Mary, they're burnt. Don't worry, they're not. It's just gonna bring everything together. So for deglazing, we're gonna work with a little bit of apple cider. I'm going with a dry apple cider. Very, very tasty. So an alcoholic one. If you wanted to do, yeah. You're like, Mary, where do you buy your apple cider in a can? The liquor store. Honestly, a dry apple cider is great because it's a little less sweet than a classic apple cider. If you wanted to do this with non-alcoholic, that would work perfectly too. This just gives a nicer flavor for me, a little bit sharper, which I really, really like. Now, unfortunately, this stew is drinking the whole thing. You need 2 cups of this cider, so that's a tall can. Typically, I try to write a recipe where you get a little swig yourself. Today, that just wasn't happening for me. So just dump that whole can of cider right on in. And again, try to go for a dry cider because some of them have a ton of sugar in them. So I'm just gonna scrape the bottom. That's gonna start to cook up and lift up all of those little bits on the bottom. And now I'm gonna actually return that pork into the pan. So I've got it all golden brown, looking great. Again, not cooked all the way through though. This is still gonna be as tough as a pair of old boots, so don't try eating it anytime soon. So add that right on into the mix. And then to encourage more kind of stewiness, we're gonna add in some broth and to cut through that little bit of cider. So I'm going in with about 2 cups of low sodium chicken broth. You can also use vegetable broth. Steer clear of something like beef broth because it's a little too heavy. So about 2 cups goes in, basically just enough to cover, as well as 2 sprigs of sage. Sage season. Sage, apples, and pork are made for each other. Now, essentially what I'm gonna do is just take these, pop them right on into the pot, and they're gonna infuse into there almost like tea. So what I do now, bring this up to a boil, pop the lid on, turn the heat down to low, and let that go on your stove for 45 minutes. It's gonna smell amazing. Don't take the lid off, just let it keep simmering away. It smells really good in here. I'm very excited about it. So this has been simmering away for about 45 minutes. So that pork is gonna be on the tender side now. Not perfectly tender though. This is one of those annoying stews that actually takes a little bit of time, but it's totally worth it because your house is gonna smell amazing. So this is where we do a little bit of a reveal. We've got that beautiful simmering down stew. Now it is stew, so she's not cute. You know what I mean? Anytime you make stew, you're like, yeah, it's brown and it's delicious, but you gotta trust me on it. So the first thing I need to do though is like kind of sneak out those little bits of sage because they have done their job. So this is the only kind of tricky part of the recipe is finding those sprigs of sage. If the leaves stay in there, that's fine. You just wanna find those stalks because they've done their job. Almost like when you're making a cup of tea, you get rid of the tea bag about like, you know, after a few minutes. You wanna get rid of these because they really don't have a lot of flavor anymore. And crunching down on a sage sprig, not fun. Not what you want, a little too punchy in my opinion. All right, so I'm giving it a stir, just seeing if I find any. I think we got them all. If I didn't, the winner is the person who finds the sage sprig. Okay, so that is looking perfect to me at this point, but I wanna add a little bit of a topping on, because again, stew's not the cutest thing in the world. We're gonna make this a little bit prettier. So I'm gonna bring this just on over here. And then I'm gonna make a beautiful little topping to go on top of this. This is almost like, I was trying to think of a little bit of a play on like a shepherd's pie, because it's essentially stewy meat, with some vegetables with a potato topping. But as opposed to doing a mashed potato, I'm kind of almost doing a scallop potato situation. We were kind of like spitballing what we would call this, and I was like, pig herder pie. So what was it, swine guy pie, stew? I don't know. We're just sticking with this delicious apple and pork stew with the potato topping. All right, so the first thing I need in my bowl is my potatoes. Now, I'm doing a mixture of golden, like yellow or Yukon Gold potatoes, as well as some sweet potatoes. I like the flavor. I like that little bit of a mixture. The textures are a little different as they cook down too, which is amazing. Also, you know, more vitamins, so good. So I've got 2 of each here that I've just peeled and sliced. If you don't want to peel them, just give them a scrub. You can eat sweet potato peels as well. Just give them a good scrub and you're good to go. Pop those into a big bowl. And then onto there, I'm also gonna add in a little bit of onion. I like adding in kind of flavors that are reminiscent of the stew. So we've got that red onion in there. I'm gonna add some in here as well. So I've got half of a red onion that I've just thinly sliced up. So add that right on in as well. And then for a bit of flavoring, I'm going in with about a tablespoon of that finely sliced sage. Since this is gonna be on top, the sage is gonna brown and crisp up a little bit and give you a little bit of a different flavor than the one going on in the stew. So that's going on. Now, in addition to that, I'm also gonna toss in my cream. So anytime I'm making a scallop potato, we're going full whipping cream. Yeah. Don't skip it. Don't do half and half. This is a good amount of fat in it, so I actually don't even need to add in the butter or oil or anything like that. This is enough fat that that's gonna coat those. So I'm going in with about 1/3 of a cup of that cream right on over top, just enough to kind of coat those potatoes. Perfect. Now I'm gonna season that up with a little bit of salt, maybe a bit of pepper if you're feeling it, and then of course a little bit of nutmeg, because you need to have your nutmeg, so we're good to go. Listen, it is nutmeg season, so y'all get ready for pocket nutmeg. It's happening all the time. The nutmeg brings such a nice kind of warm, lemony flavor. Now, I hear some of you, I'm gonna give this a toss, but I hear some of you, you're like, Mary, you have apple cider in there, but you don't have apples in there. How is this a pork and apple stew? Well, I'm gonna add those in. Let me just give these a toss. just to kind of coat with all of that cream and that nutmeg and that salt. This is honestly so tasty. If you want, you can add a little more cream, which I'm gonna do just for fun. That never hurt anybody. All right, so that's looking beautiful. Just get it nice and tossed together. But now I'm gonna add in the apples. You can also do this on the stove, but really at this point, we don't actually need to cook the apples because this is gonna finish in the oven. But I do like adding my apples later on in the process. Otherwise, it kind of turns into applesauce in there. I want these to hold their shape. So as opposed to using something kind of tart and a little bit softer, like a Macintosh, I actually like to use like what I call an eating apple, like an out-of-hand apple. Something like a Gala is really nice in here. Galas to me taste like apple juice. They've got that little bit of sharpness. They taste like a classic apple, crispy and beautiful. So I've just peeled and wedged those up. I'm gonna add a little lemon juice. You know the trick, a little lemon juice makes it so they don't brown, but it also, for some reason, I feel like the acidity helps those apples hold their shape a little bit, and again, cuts through the richness of that stew. So I'm just gonna stir those on through that stew. These are gonna cook down, get a little tender, but again, hold their shape. And then for a little bit of green, I'm going in with some dark leafy greens. You can use any you like, any you've got on hand. Swiss chard would be good, collard greens would be amazing. I'm going in with dino kale. You could also use any sort of kale, just anything that's got a good long cooking process. So add that on in. Give that a little bit of a stir. And then you wanna go on with those potatoes. So the steam from the stew is gonna steam the potatoes from the bottom, and we're gonna finish them in the oven. At this point, if you wanna be cute, you can lay them out like a fan, like a deck of cards, like classic scallop potatoes, or you can just dump them on. I'm gonna dump mine. I'm gonna gently dump mine. So you can obviously layer them, so you've got some sweet potato in one area, maybe some golden potato in another, but you just wanna make sure it's nice and covered. That's gonna act almost like a little bit of a lid for this stew. They're gonna kind of float on top with those beautiful onions. Honestly, this is looking cute. Don't even worry about fanning them out like a card, just do what I'm doing. I'm learning here. This usually takes me a good while to do, but you know what? Sometimes messy is more perfect than perfect. All right. So add those on and we are good to go. I'm gonna pour the rest of that cream over top because we don't wanna waste it. Then what you wanna do is take this beautiful dish and pop it into a 400-degree oven. That's a nice hot oven. That's gonna cook those potatoes and continue cooking that pork. This is gonna go in for another 45 minutes. So we've got 45 minutes on the stove, and then about 45 minutes to an hour in this nice hot oven. Those potatoes are gonna get tender, the stew is gonna get tender as well, and you are gonna end up with a total showstopper that you can just plop on your table looking something like this little number. Look at that. So cute, so tasty. I'm feeling really excited about it. There was someone backstage who was feeling really pumped about this as well. So my bud Justin is gonna come out here to give this a taste. Coming out, buddy. Hey, man.
Hi, man.
How's it going?
Great, how are you?
Oh my gosh, what an absolute delight. Justin is perhaps like one of the smiliest people, and I love it so much.
Thanks.
So how do you feel about apples and pork?
I'm a swine guy.
You're a swine guy, stew lover. Amazing. Now this is a really good one. You've got that tender pork in there, those greens, so you're having all that deliciousness.
That's amazing.
I know, right? With the scallop potato topping.
Yeah.
You can obviously do some more. Now, are you a sour cream man?
Yes, absolutely.
But of course,
Yeah.
I wouldn't think of a little bit of sour cream right on top.
Oh my God.
Maybe some fresh sage on there as well for a little bit of brightness. Okay, I'm gonna hand this to you. I'll get you a fork or.
Okay, thank you.
I'll get you a fork, a spoon, and a knife. I don't know what you're feeling today.
Yeah.
There you go. I'm excited. Okay, cool.
I'm so excited.
You really
too.
match the stew.
I did.
Yeah.
I did not plan this.
No. Okay, getting some potato.
Sweet potato.
You're doing very well.
Golden potato.
Yeah,
sour
sour cream.
Here we
That's
go.
a pro bite right there. Tender, delish. My man. Yes. That was one of our best high fives of the week. Hey, Mary here. What did you think? Drop your comments below and don't forget to like and subscribe for more of the good stuff.